The PVA bag, without question, has to be one of the best ways for catching carp. But there's also many questions surrounding the PVA bag, which sometimes can be confusing. Like, do I put the lead in first, or do I put the hook bait in first? Or do I put a bit of bait in first? Do I use a pop-up? Do I use a bottom bait? Do I use a bright one? Or do I match the hatch? In this video, we are going to find out exactly how all these scenarios play out by placing the PVA bags in front of an underwater camera to see exactly what happens. This is the PVA bag autopsy. So for this video, we have ventured to the spectacular Boathouse Fisheries. One, because it's got an amazing stock of fish, but more importantly, the water here is absolutely tap water clear, and it's perfect for presenting an underwater camera, putting those bags in so we can see exactly what's going on in front of the lens. Now, I got here last night, I put some PVA bags out straight away in the method that I like to use myself, and we had a result as well. So I'll cut back to the footage from last night and show you what we had. An absolute little belter. It's about 1 o'clock in the morning. Have a look at this.
Just like we're ready.
Hey, sunshine, hang on. Right, there we go. Check him out. That is absolutely mega. What a beautiful little fish. Scales for days, and he just looks immense. Nice and dark as well, proper dark shoulders on him. But yeah, made up with him, proper made up. Another PVA bag muncher for the bank, and in the net it went. So yeah, happy with him. We will get him back now, get the rod back out, and who knows, we might have another one as well. But I'm over the moon. First night success. Happy days, yes. So very happy to get off the mark with that lovely little scaly one there and watching him swim back in the early hours. It's always nice to catch one on the first night and on a method that we're going to show you today as well. So before we get onto the film, I just want to show you the bits and pieces that we're using today just to explain why and how and all the rest of it. So first up, the two sort of lead arrangements you'll see on the film itself. I use an inline drop-off system, which is literally just a little bung. You sort of take out the inner of the lead of the inline system. The leads that I'm using have got a groove running down the middle, and all I'm doing is, once I've sort of taken out the inner housing, that bung goes inside. The leader runs over the lead itself, and then the tail just sort of pushes in the back there. And the idea of that is, because I'm fishing quite sort of weedy lakes, on the take itself, the bung will come out, the lead will sort of drop down. If it hits any weed or gets stuck, that lead will just pull off and job done. That's the whole point of that system, and I favour that when I'm fishing weedy waters, which is quite a lot. So you'll be seeing that one on the underwater, and also our bag stems as well. Now, I favour these when I'm actually sort of tying on naked line as opposed to using a leader. So the top of the bag sort of stem just sticks out the top of the bag, and you can just loop that on very quickly. So you'll be seeing that as well on the underwater. I'll explain a little bit more about that later in the film. And then we'll run through all the little hook baits and bits and pieces and everything else that's going on, and the mixes. There's a lot to get into here, but first up, let's take a look at where should the lead go. So first test is going to be lead positions, guys. As you can see on the bucket there, 3 rigs, all pretty much the same. The only difference being one of them is tipped with a little bit of yellow corn, which is the one in my hand here, and there's a reason for that. So the first one we're going to do is put the lead in first, with the hook bait going back up the leader. Second one we'll do is the hook bait first and the lead further up the actual bag. And then this one, we're going to mimic a method feeder. So if you can imagine, method feeders are weighted on one side, and the reason for that is once you cast the lead and sort of feeder out, the weight falls to the bottom first and the hook bait is presented on the top. I want to mimic that inside the PVA bag. So the actual lead will be on the outside of the bag and the pop-up or the wafter is going to sit on top of the lead. We're going to see how that opens up to sort of mimic a method feeder. So those are the three things we're going to look at first. Let's get cracking with the first one. This one caught me off guard how quickly it melted with me fumbling about with the camera. But as you can see, once it's melted, it looked absolutely perfect. Now this being the lead going in the bag first and then the hook link going back up the leader to the actual hook bait. But for me, that looks absolutely ideal. You can see a little bit the hook link on show there, but overall, I'll be very, very happy to cast that out. That being a combo pellet mix, and you can see at the bottom of the screen there, the little bit of the lead poking through, the anti-tangle sleeve, and then the hook link bending up to the actual hook bait. But overall, yeah, very, very happy to cast this presentation out. The wafter on show there is quite buoyant. You can see it sort of pulled through the pellet mix, so it's sort of sitting there, cherry on top of the cake, ready for that pickup. But yeah, overall, I'll give this a solid 8 out of 10 for presentation. The next bag going in is going to be the hook bait first, followed by the lead at the top of the bag. Okay, so moving on to bag number 2, this being the hook bait going in first and the lead at the top of the bag. You can just about see the sort of tail of the lead poking at the top there, but straight away, a really nice breakdown time. It's sort of melting very evenly there, and for me, a really nice subtle sort of setup. Now here I've used a wafter, but I've actually weighted it, so it's not sort of smashing through the pellets on show, but you can see the pink wafter just about under the pellet there. And for me, that is a perfect presentation, a great parcel of food. As the fish comes in now and hits that pellet, that wafter will fly into the fish's mouth. And I actually prefer this method of setting up a PVA bag with the lead at the top of the bag and the hook bait sort of where you can see it now. If I was using a lead at the bottom of the bag, I'll be using that when I'm trying to cast big distances. Obviously, you want the sort of heaviest part of the actual bag leading the cast. But if I'm using it sort of short to medium range, this for me would be the absolutely perfect setup. So in a nutshell, very, very happy to cast this presentation out. Absolutely love how it looks. And yeah, it's a big tick from me there. Very, very happy with this sort of presentation on show. So this next one is something I'm really interested in, and that being mimicking the method feeder. As we said before, the weight of the method is on one side, and it makes sure that the weight of that is falling, lands that side, so the hook bait always sits on top of that weight. So that's what we've done on this one. We've mimicked the method. We've put the actual lead on the one side of the PVA bag, and then the hook bait above the lead. So as I'm casting out now, I'm literally just going to throw it in. It should land, obviously, hook bait side up, and that should open up perfectly and the hook bait should be exposed on the top. That's the theory anyway, so let's put it to the test and get it in the drink. So just as we thought, it landed lead side first, exposing the hook bait on top, which is exactly what we wanted. Now what I really like about this is that you could probably get away with using a very short hook link. You've only got to come off the lead and across the PVA bag, so you could literally get away with a maybe 2-inch or 3-inch hook link. The only thing I'd say with saying that, it may hinder the hooking properties, as I think sometimes using that 3 to 4-inch hook link allows the hook bait to fly further back into a carp's mouth. But overall, I absolutely love this presentation. Having the lead on the very bottom of the lake bed, the hook bait sitting above it in the middle of the bag itself is a massive bonus and the perfect presentation. I would definitely play around with hook baits, but overall, this is a massive tick for me. Mimicking the method setup in a PVA bag is definitely something I'm going to put forward into my angling. Short to medium range use for sure, but yeah, overall, I love this setup. So next up, guys, we're going to look at hook baits themselves, that being pop-ups, wafters, tiger nuts, and of course, the actual feed that you're putting in there. Can you put 11mm pellets? Let's have a look and get into hook baits. Without question, the Maggot is a mega bait, but I also wanted them as a hook bait as well. A little wafter and a few tied on the top. Now with making the bag, I like to sandwich the freebies in between 2 lots of pellets. It just makes it far more easier to compact the bag and get it more aerodynamic, ready for the actual cast. So here is the actual bag now underwater. As ever, the hook bait has gone in first with the lead at the top. I have speeded up the time here, but to give you an indication, overall, this is an amazing bag of attraction. Lots of visuals going on, lots and lots of movement, and as you can see the hook bait just down the bottom, and it's just starting to poke through now. You can just see the pink wafter starting to play its part, pushing through all the pellet, and I've had some absolute mega results during this last winter on this actual setup. It's definitely right up there with one of my go-to PVA bag tactics. Absolutely love maggots and small micro pellets. It's a proper winner. Moving on to the next hook bait to have a look at, and this is going to be tiger nuts. The tiger nut for me has always been known as the big fish bait. In this test I wanted a double tiger, teaming that up with the mini crayfish pellet. Bag in the water and let's see what happens. Once again it's the lead at the top, hook bait at the bottom. Straight away a nice and slow disperse of the PVA, all melting nicely, all looking great. At this point I found it a little bit disappointing. I wanted the hook bait to push through the pellets a bit more so the tigers would actually be on show, but unfortunately that wasn't happening. With that in mind, it was back to the tackle box, 6mm drill bit, a little bit of cork, and I'm sandwiching this cork in between two tiger nuts to give them a slight bit of buoyancy. Not so much they'd be popped up, but just enough for them to kick through the pellet to put themselves on show as a more visual appeal. Bag back in the water and let's see what happens. This time I've opted for the combi mix of pellets, which is a bit more of everything going on. As the bag started to melt, I can see straight away the tiger nuts starting to work their way through the pellet, this being the cork coming into play. After a minute or so, the tigers have pushed through and sitting very proud on show. This is exactly what I wanted. Sitting a little bit prouder through the pellets, almost sitting there begging to be picked up. I absolutely love the look of this now, and this is 100% what I'll be doing if I was setting up tiger nuts inside a PVA bag. Definitely give them a little bit of buoyancy to make them put themselves on show. So the next bag going in was a Snowman setup, this being a 15mm bottom bait tipped with a 12mm pink peril. Once again, it's having that little bit of buoyancy in the actual hook bait that helps it pull through the pellet and puts it on show. In layman terms, it's going to be one of the first items that the carp picks up as it approaches the parcel of food. Definitely a trend starting to kick in here. So next up guys, I've got something that the barbel anglers out there will be going, that's the one! A 14mm krill pre-drilled pellet. Now, I think as carp anglers, we probably overlook pellets as hook baits. Carp absolutely love them. They're reared on them. You know, are we missing the trick by not having these as a hook bait? And how does it look in a PVA bag? I'm mimicking these up, or sort of marrying these up, should I say, with some 11mm high oil pellets. You know, you can see there, they go together quite nicely, but how does it look in a PVA bag? There's always been this thing that you can't put big pellets in a PVA bag because of all the sort of spaces between the pellets. You can't compact it down. So let's get it in the drink, have a look, and see if it takes our fancy. So the first thing you'll notice here is the absolutely horrendous shape of it. Trying to get this into a compact shape for casting was a nightmare with those 11mm pellets. In fact, I think casting out a wet Ugg boot would be far more aerodynamic. You'll also notice that the bag is struggling to melt calmly, and this is down to me not poking holes in the bag, so bear that in mind. I definitely think if you're putting out a PVA bag, piercing it a few times with a boiling needle aids with the calmness of the PVA bag melting, as opposed to what you're seeing there. Okay, it's a parcel of pellets, and that's just it. You can see the lead, you can see the hook bait, but in all honesty, this is doing absolutely nothing for me. Obviously the carp might have other ideas and they might find it absolutely perfect, but for me as an angler looking at that, nah, it's not for me. So straight away I thought, let's swap it over to the combo pellet mix. Now look at that, that is so much better. The combo of pellets all working together, the hook bait on show, a lot more better for casting as well, and the presentation is absolutely on point. So for me, if you're wanting to use a pellet as a hook bait in a PVA bag, definitely stick to the combo mix when putting this out there. That for me is a massive tick. Yeah, do you know what? I actually quite like the look of that. 14mm pellet in with that combo mix just looked right, doesn't it? So I'm going to give that a go in my own angling, a proper angling situation. But guys, moving now on to the sort of pop-ups. In front of me here, I've got a baby Ronnie. I say it's a baby Ronnie because I've scaled everything down. That is a small 12mm bug pop-up there in yellow, size 5 wide gate, standard Ronnie rig swivel, hook bead, hook ring swivel, and that is enough to balance that pop-up out. I don't need any putty, which is absolutely ideal for the PVA bag. I'm going to team that up with that combo mix again with the sort of 2, 3, 4mm pellet. I just think that will sit right, as opposed to just all being very small. I think having that Ronnie in it will look better as a mixed bag of pellets. So we'll get it in the drink and we'll find out. Once again here, a very nice slow melt on the PVA bag, which allows the pellets to subtly spread out. And just like the Undertaker in the WWE, rising from the canvas, here comes the Ronnie rig, popping up proud as punch. Now I love how this is sitting right smack in the middle of the bag, and that's on purpose because we put the hook bait at the bottom of the bag first. The actual swivel, which is the balancing or keeping the pop-up on the deck, that is in the middle of the bag, which obviously when it's popping, it's pushing through the pellets and sitting right smack in the middle, which is absolutely perfect. A fantastic presentation. Definitely another winner here. Maybe adding in some of the maggots like we talked about earlier would make this even more appealing, definitely in those winter months, but something to bear in mind. Overall, Ronnie in a PVA bag, it's another thumbs up. To be fair, most of them I've seen I'll be quite happy to use, and I'm hoping you guys are getting stuff confirmed in your mind's eye now what it's going on when it's out there in the pond. So I'm going to show you a little trick now I was shown many years ago. You might have seen it, you might have heard of it, but if you're using a bottom bait or a Snowman or a wafter and you always want it to be sitting proud above the pellet, so it's the first thing that the carp sees, I'm going to show you a little trick now that I was shown. It's really cool. So I'll jump back in the chair, I'll get the PVA bag stuff, and before I sort of make the bag up, I'll show you what I'm talking about. Right, time for the PVA bag tip. As we said, let's get this lovely pink wafter sitting proud at all times. So what we're going to do, we've already sorted out the rig there, it's on ready to rock and roll. So some PVA tape, we're going to take off literally about, I don't know, like 5 or 6 inches, something like that. Okay, now what you want to do is get your hands on a very buoyant pop-up. So in this case, I've just got some very buoyant 12 millers. I'm going on the 12 millers because it's just easy to get in the bag. So what we're going to do is put it on a boilie needle, double the tape over, and then we're going to slide, basically as we were doing, as you do maggots normally, you're sliding the boilie on to the PVA tape and you're pulling it through the boilie itself so it exposes like so. And then all we're doing, we're going to pull it back down so it leaves like a little loop of PVA at the top, as you can see it there. And all we're going to do is get our hook bait and the hook itself, hook into that loop that you've made, and then literally pull the hook or pull the actual pop-up so the hook sits like so against the pop-up. Okay, take a pair of scissors and trim the tag end off there. Essentially, that is what you're putting inside your PVA bag. The idea is once the water breaks through the bag, the pop-up will pull the wafter or your bottom bait, whatever it is, proud above the actual pellet. As soon as the PVA melts that your hook is attached to, the pop-up comes to the surface and your wafter or bottom bait will settle back down onto the pellet, sitting proud, ready for the pickup. Basically, it's the cherry on top. So let's get it in the bag, get it in the pond, and have a look. 1, if it works, and 2, if it looks the bollocks. Now for this one, I thought I'd actually show you the PVA bag landing in the swim itself. So there you go, one big plume of silt, which is pretty much what happens when we target those silty areas out there in the pond. There's a couple of different angles on this one, but as you can see there, the bag is starting to melt here. The pop-up is trying its best to work its way through the bag. This is where the buoyancy comes into play. And there it is, that's the magic bit as it pulls its way through the actual pellets. Now we're just waiting for the PVA to melt, which is in between the hook point and the actual pop-up. And there you go. Drops down nicely. Switching over to the GoPro footage, you can see there it's absolutely on the money, sitting perfectly. A cool little trick you can put into your own PVA bag work. So when you're doing a video like this, you really do need someone who's enthusiastic with you. The state of this. Henry, come on, mate. I think he wants to go home. But basically, I've got 3 PVA bags now ready to go. In these bags, what we're going to do is put the hook bait in first. I'm then going to put a sort of a 1/2 inch layer of ground bait, because I know there's a few people out there that don't want anything around the hook point whatsoever in terms of something it can get stuck into, including the micro pellets. I get that as well. I've never found those micros sort of hinder the hooking process or the hook point at all, but we'll put the ground bait in with the hook bait at the bottom of the bag, fill it up with the micro pellets, and then after that we're going to inject the liquids into them. The 3 liquids we're looking at today, I've got the bug food liquid, which I've used since we've been here, and that is the method that I've had the fish on. I'm also going to put in the bug smoke as well. I know that's very, very popular, and I'm also going to put in like an additional salmon oil as well to see how they all sort of react. What happens when the bag's open. Again, I'll be piercing the bags as well to make sure they sort of open evenly or melt evenly. I think we've looked at the tests, what I've seen. Going forward, I think I will always now pierce the bag sort of randomly to help the bag melt really, really subtle, if that makes sense. So it's sort of melts evenly as opposed to exploding everywhere. So those are the 3 tactics we're going to use now. The bags are ready. Let's get the oils in and the liquids and see how they perform underwater. Okay, so the first bag in here is the bug smoke liquid with the dry ground bait. Now, straight away, I could see that it was struggling from the off. I didn't like how the ground bait was sort of pulling the bottom of the bag up in one big clump. And you could see here as the PVA bag is actually melting now, it pulls away in one big clump. That looks horrendous. Now, the hook bait is actually in the middle of that lot. I just didn't like it from the off. For me, you need to be using proper out and out bag mixes for things like this. I liked what this smoke had done to the pellet, covered them in an attractor, but in terms of the ground bait, massive no-no. I'd stay away from this. Now, this stayed like this for, sort of said, 5 minutes. I had to take matters into my own hand and hit it with the GoPro camera, and that was the result after. Hook bait on show, all sediment in the swim. You could argue that's what the carp would do, but I just didn't like it. It wasn't a good presentation for me. I didn't like how the ground bait performed. So what I wanted to do was wet the ground bait with an oil, put it back in the same scenario and see how it performed now with a sort of oiled up ground bait. So bag in the water and we're off. So for this one, we've injected this as well with the salmon oil. I thought because the salmon oil was in the actual ground bait, I thought it'd be might as well make the whole bag about the salmon oil itself. And what you're seeing now is pretty much how the bag actually stayed. Nothing really going on. It didn't really sort of break down nicely. It just stays as a clump in a way. The ground bait didn't move because obviously it's quite sort of congealed and packed it together. So for me, the learning curve here is to stay away from ground baits. I would only be using out and out bag mixes for PVA bag work. I'd leave the ground baits alone. Obviously the oil will be kicking out attractors. We just can't see them because it's more of a clear oil. All in all, this is a massive thumbs down for me, and you can see there exactly why on screen. So next bag up was going to be the bug food liquid. Okay, so the bag here is the mini crayfish pellets injected with the bug food liquid, and the hook bait I've gone for is the Ronnie rig again. One, because I just love how it does that. Pulls up, pushes through the pellets, and you can see how much liquid is sort of pulling off those pellets and moving across the actual lake bed. I love that bug food liquid. It proper does a good job of sort of dispersing and moving and attracting those fish into the area, and that is what I had the fish on, and that confirms in my mind's eye what the actual food liquids do to the pellet. And you can see on this next clip how much it's actually grown on the lake bed. It's actually moving into the silt almost, so that is pumping out loads of attractors. I like the mini crayfish mix, I like the actual Ronnie rig, so for me this is just a massive tick. And you can see there it's almost giving it a halo effect, and yeah, what carp can resist that? It's one that I'll be using for sure. Look at that perfect presentation, and yeah, I'll be going forward with this method of PVA bag. So yeah, another interesting look there into ground baits and liquids and what happens to them once the bag melts, and that's what's going on when we're sat behind our rods and we're waiting for that carp to pick our bait up. So yeah, another interesting look. So what did you guys take from this in terms of, you know, ideas that you can now put into your own angling? Is there something that you'll sort of take from this and take from that? And you like the idea of this, that and the other, or is there something that you've already done in your PVA bag work that we haven't mentioned that works really, really well? Let us know in the comments. It'd be really great to hear your feedback. In terms of the items that we've used here today, obviously it's been the Rapid bag system. Those are available from all Fox stockists, and there's all different sizes available. Like I say, I do favour the 60 by 130. That's just a personal choice. The inline drop-off system is my go-to. I do like the bag stems, but I always tend to favour the drop-off purposely because I fish a lot of weedy waters. And in terms of the hook sort of links that I'm using, I always favour a very, very supple and soft braid. You know, something like the Reflex or the super soft braid that's out now. Those are my two favourites from a bag work, and definitely stay away from the sort of coated hook links or your fluorocarbons and things like that. You want something that's really supple, so when you're compacting the bag, the actual hook link can find its way in and around all those pellets, and I genuinely think it helps hook the carp a bit more as well. Having that supple hook link, once the carp comes in and picks up, because it being so supple, it flies into the actual mouth a lot quicker, a lot easier. So definitely advice there on that. Soft hook links is the go-to for PVA bag work. In a nutshell, guys, that is it. We are done. That has been the PVA bag autopsy. But guys, if you're liking the content and you've liked the film, please give us a like and a subscribe. And we are over on the socials as well. Always Carp Fishing. Check us out on Instagram, Facebook, and we're even on TikTok now, even though he's not much dancing these days. But yeah, we are over there as well. So check out all the media platforms. And that's it from me and the sleepy one here. Thank you ever so much, and we will catch you on the next one.